In conversation with Marcine M. Moore. Marcine M. Moore, born in New York City and raised in Texas, she has experienced the best of both city and country life, earning her the nickname Trans Yankee. From a young age, a love for English and creative writing was evident, often sharing her stories with friends. Today, she's a professional in human resource development. Marcin is a two-time best-selling author in the poetry genre. A debut book, Phoenix Art, and our second bestseller, Reflections Rising, have garnered well-received praise. Her work has been featured in What's Up Dallas Magazine, Voyage Dallas Magazine, an international book show, and she does book signing and poetry performance around the DFW and Texas areas. Her poetry is raw and powerful, touching on various topics such as love, loss, betrayal, and the rebirth of self-love. In her free time, Marcin enjoys traveling, karaoke, watching sport, and above all, cherishing moments with her loved ones. Her journey continues to inspire readers. She can be found on Facebook, Instagram, Linktree, and TikTok. And on today's episode of Auto Interview, it's my utmost pleasure and joy to have on the show today, Marcin M. Moore. How are you doing, Marcin?
Hi, Peter. I'm wonderful. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing very fine too, and it's lovely to have you on the show today. Quite exciting. We're gonna be having a
Yeah,
conversation around your work.
yes, I'm excited. Fellow
Yeah,
poet.
absolutely. That's lovely. Now, Marcin, let's start with your poetry collection in the name of Phoenix Art, which I love the banner you have behind you, displaying it already. Quite beautiful, really. And I'd love to ask you, how does this book come about? What inspired you to write Phoenix Art?
It was a collection of poetry from 13 years. And so I
Mm,
had I had entered, my cousin had wanted me to try to write a book with my poetry, and I entered like a contest, and it was like a fly by night contest. It was kind of flighty.
yeah.
And I was like, after I figured out it wasn't all the way on the up and up, I decided that this was my door opening to writing a book. And I researched, found a publisher, and that's how the Phoenix Heart came about. But the poetry is a collection of 13 years in that particular book.
Mm, wow.
Yeah.
This sounds,
And that started from a divorce. So
oh. Wow, it's quite lovely to get to know about the making of Onyx art. Quite beautiful. And if you have a sample there, would you love to show to the camera just so we can see what it
sure.
looks like?
That's Phoenix Heart.
That's a beautiful cover. Would you love to talk about how the cover came to be and also how you came about the title, the book title?
Sure. I like mythology. And so when I was writing
Yeah.
the book and I was thinking of a title, I knew I was going to use the phoenix because the phoenix is a bird who regenerates. He always rises from the ashes. So
Yeah.
how perfect when your heart is broken and you recover and you heal your heart. That was
Oh,
how the title came, Phoenix Heart. So
oh,
in order to rise from the ashes, you had to burn.
absolutely. Yeah. That's beautiful, really. I love your take on that. Thank you for mentioning. And now, you also have another book in the name of Reflections Rising. For readers who
Yeah.
haven't read that yet, and without giving much information away, could we have a sneak of what you'd expect in terms of themes picking up Reflections Rising?
Reflections Rising is a more lighter. It's not as raw as the first book. However, does have the same great poetry. I cover relationships, love, death, children,
Mm,
dealing with vices in your life. So it's a more open, more open topics than what Phoenix Heart was, because Phoenix Heart really was raw and dealt with relationships and
mm.
healing yourself. but Reflections Rising delves into self reflection on a multitude of topics. It has a journal in the back because
Oh,
since the topic was self reflection and the blue
yeah.
phoenix, like we said, I stayed on the phoenix. The blue phoenix represents transformation and healing.
Mm,
So I thought I'd top that book off by adding a journal in the back where people can write their thoughts on the poetry or any other thoughts that may come to mind.
that's beautiful. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing. And I love the sound of this, really. I love the sound of your book. Sounds quite lovely to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And now, as a poet, I'd love to ask you, in your own term and in your own word, how can you define poetry? What does poetry means to you?
Well, to me, it's a release of my feelings and my emotions because
Mm,
it evokes me to my writing, right?
yeah,
Because I think most poets, and I could be wrong, but most poets, when we write from that position of emotion. So normally,
yeah,
if I'm experiencing something or a phrase or something pops into my head, I immediately stop and I write. So it's a release. It's an emotional release, and it's something that can't not be explained unless you've experienced
yeah.
releasing your feelings, right?
Mm. I love your take on that, and I love your divination of poetry. You're calling it a release of feeling. That's very true, and I can relate wholeheartedly to that. And now I'd love to share
Right.
with you too my own definition of poetry. I love your
Okay.
definition, the release of emotion, the release of feeling. That's quite beautiful. In my own time, I've always considered poetry as a language of the soul of the poet, the language of the soul of the writer at that particular time, the language of the soul of the writer. And the language can vary in time to time. That's why I love to add at a particular time to my divination, because sometimes the language could be a reflection of, it could communicate, say, love, relationship,
Right. Right.
heartbrokenness, grief, sorrow, pain, happiness, laughter, so many things
Right.
actually. Racism, you can go on and on and on. So I love to say poetry is a language of the soul of the poet at that particular time that the poem is written.
And that's so true, Peter, because I wrote a poem about insomnia one night because I couldn't sleep. So I wrote a whole poem
Yeah,
about insomnia.
absolutely. Yeah, that's why I particularly love the time zone divination. It's the language of the soul of the poet
That,
at that particular time that the poem itself was written. So it's beautiful.
right. And that is such a great definition. I'm gonna remember that, Peter, because no, seriously, that's a great definition.
It is, yeah. Thank you. I'm excited you love it, really. It has always been my divination whenever anyone asks me, Peter, what is poetry to you? How can you divine poetry? I'm like, yeah, poetry to me is a language of the soul of the writer or of the poet at a particular time that a poem is being written.
And that's so true. That mean
Yeah,
that's very true.
yeah, I'm excited you love it too. Thank you for mentioning. And now I'd like to let us to talk about feedbacks and criticism. As authors, we all have different ways of reacting to feedbacks and criticism of our works. And I'm curious to know your opinion about criticism, be it positive or negative. How important are book reviews and feedbacks to you? How do you utilize them? Would you like to talk about
Okay.
that?
Yeah, sure. Well, I have a unique position on criticism because, as you mentioned in my bio, a human resources. I'm in human resources development. So, um, I would be a hypocrite because I preach daily that to employees that when you're being criticized, it's not to tear you down, it's to help you be better. So
Mm,
if you need to do A, B, and C and you're missing B, and someone tells you put B in there and it comes together, you know, that fixes you. So that's how I look at when people are telling me about my books or my poetry. I don't take it too hard, because you can't take it to, I mean, you take it personally, right? You take
Mm,
it to heart, but you don't take it personally. But if someone's telling you something, you should, I wrap my mind around it to say, oh, well, maybe I can improve that way. So I don't take criticism personally. Now, as far as the book reviews, I love the book reviews, because most authors don't realize that book re- book reviews draw people in, because you
yeah,
already having someone vouching for your book, saying, "Hey, I
yeah.
read this, and I got A, B, and C out of this, and this is
Mm,
why you should read." Um, Most of my readers, when they purchase books from me or they buy my book, that's one of the things that I ask them to do. I say, please leave a review,
yeah.
so I can get that, not so much on Barnes and Nobles, but to help other readers know that you're not
Mm,
just saying you like the book because Marcine wrote it. You know,
yeah, yeah.
you like the content and you got something out of it.
That's beautiful. That's amazing. I love your take on reviews, really. That's quite lovely and educative as well. Yeah. We all, it's beautiful because I too love reviews. I love reading them, be it positive or negative. I love to hear what people think of, a book after they've read it. It's very necessary. And sometimes it just gives us this kind of beautiful, you know, satisfaction, I'd say, especially when it's been positive or when people can relate with what you've written, that, oh yeah, it speaks to my life. Yeah, I could see a bit of
Right.
myself in the poem. It's always an amazing feeling, makes you smile and
It
joyful.
does. It does. And when someone gets something out of your work, yeah, it does make you smile. And it's awesome for people to think enough of you and your work to review it. I
Yeah,
think that's an accolade in itself.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. That was true. Now, apart from Phoenix Heart and Reflections Rising, do you have any other works you've authored or say currently working on? Also, I love to ask you, that's my first part. What is the hardest part of writing poetry? That's my number two in there.
Okay. Okay. So back to the first part of the question.
Yeah,
I am writing on a novel. I want to say it's an
it's
urban
beautiful.
fiction, thriller, romance. They'll have to
Oh,
categorize it for me, but it's called Gemini.
well,
There's a little mix of everything in there, but I am excited about it, and the plots and the
wow.
characters, because everything is alive in my head, when you write. So that should be coming out, I'm gonna say the beginning of next year.
Yeah,
Because
wow.
writing poetry, you can write 3 words and say, "Hey, I'm tired." That's a poem. But with the novel, I have
No,
to go back and read and make sure everything's connecting, and that people can follow. So it's a different task, but I'm
experience.
really enjoying it. Yes. Yes. Really, to me, the hardest part, it has nothing to do with the writing, is when my editor jumps in and she wants to correct, like, um my punctuation. That's what's the
Mm,
hardest part, because as poets, because I'm talking to you, the poet, we
yeah,
write free form, and when you're writing, if you write
yeah,
like I do, you're getting everything out then, and then you're like, gosh,
yeah,
here it is. And
yeah.
then when my editor sees it, she's like, what did you mean? Well, I know what I meant. So the hardest part is taking into consideration that I want my audience to know what I
Mm,
meant also. I guess that would be the hardest part.
yeah.
Because,
That's beautiful
because
to know, really.
mhm.
That's lovely to know. And I love your answer to that. And your answer to that actually want to make me to ask you this question that just came to my head. You've written poetry and you're currently working on a novel. Now, I'd love to ask you, which do you consider the most, say, difficult or the most easiest for you to write? Would you consider poetry a bit easier or difficult, or would you choose novel writing or storytelling, the difficult or the easiest one? Which genre out of these two, poetry and fiction, Do you consider the easiest or the hardest? I'd love to hear your take on that.
Um, right now, I'm gonna say poetry because you have more artistic freedom, right? Like I said, with the punctuation. If I say I'm writing this free verse, I don't have to worry about putting in punctuation or anything. But I'm actually liking the storytelling, but it's
Mm,
not as easy because as I stated, you have to make sure everything goes. So what I wrote on page 10 for my character, Mr. Brown, I had to make sure that I don't change anything up because it could
yeah.
change the whole
Setting.
storyline.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's what I'm figuring out is it's not a challenge. I'm actually loving it because I hadn't done it. It's like, okay, I'm liking it actually.
Yeah.
I haven't written a storyline in so long.
Yeah, it's lovely to know to hear that from you. I just wanted to, have an idea of that. Because to me, I kind of think writing story it's a bit much. I wouldn't say it's difficult, but to me it comes a bit, poetry comes to me a bit much easier to me. Yeah, I can
Right.
just sit there and the words just keep flopping into my head and say pick a pen and I start writing, jotting it down based on what I hear. But with the storyline, I kind of think it's a bit challenging. I have a story that I'm working on, but it hasn't been very easy compared to me writing
Really?
poetry. But it has been so easy for me to do within months, say 3, 4, 5 months or six, I'm done. But with a novel, it takes quite a lot of time. And okay, well, that's just
Right.
my take on that. Actually,
No, but I'm
everybody have
I'm
their
right there.
own, what goes smoothly and what goes a bit tough to them as far as writing is concerned.
Yeah, that's what I'm experiencing because, poems, you can write poems when I'm in a creative mode and I'm writing poetry, I can write 2 to 3, 4 or 5 poems, just in
Mm,
one sitting, one evening.
yeah.
But with the storyline, it's not, I mean, I have ideas, but then my ideas can't all be meshed all in there at one time because it would make no sense. And so, yeah.
That's
That's
quite
good to hear. Good to hear that it's just not me, Peter.
That's quite fun, really. That's quite
Yeah.
lovely. Thank you for mentioning. I love the sound of it. Now, Marcin, could you tell us what publishing is like for a published author like yourself? Are there any challenges you've encountered in the process of writing your book and also ever since it got published?
Like I said, as far as the publishing, and I say this repetitively, it's the editing part because the editing is never done.
Mm,
So that's always the challenge. And then, behind the scenes, people think, oh, I'm going to write and put out a book. No,
mm,
you have to think about the font,
yeah.
the font type that the publishers want. They want certain font types. The size of your book, because the size of your book matters, because the font size and the size of your book, if you take a 6x9, or 5x8, or 4x6, you have to think about that.
Mm,
And I didn't think about any of that. I just put out my poetry, and I didn't think about margining. And I've learned all of this in orphans, all this other stuff I never knew about. So that's what's very
mm,
challenging to me. Because as a
wow.
creative, we're not very well. Some creators, not let don't let me blanket everybody. Some creators, we're not that
Mm,
technical when it comes to writing. To the other part, and that's what your publisher's for, to
wow.
put the whip on you, right?
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. That's quite beautiful, really. That's quite beautiful. I love your take on this, and I can go on and on. It's quite lovely to hear. Thank you. Thank you for mentioning. And
Oh,
now,
you're welcome.
I would love you to read a couple poems. I wouldn't know if you would like to read a couple poems, but before then, I'd love to ask you, as a published author, what sort of advice do you have for other poets who are still struggling with writing and publishing a collection?
Well, I would tell them to always be themselves, authentically themselves. So I had a poet tell me the other night that she will write her poetry and she goes back and changes it. And I told her, don't do that because
Mm,
that's not being true to yourself. Because what you wrote is what you meant. And somebody, if it's not anything but one person, needs to hear that.
mm,
So don't doubt yourself. Have faith in yourself and
mm.
write what you meant to put out. I guarantee you will have an audience. Everyone has an audience for what they write. So
Yeah.
that's what I would tell poets. You have an audience. If you just put your voice out there, you have an
Wow.
audience.
That's great. That's so true. That's an amazing advice. Thank you for sharing. And I'm hoping that viewers, including myself, would love to utilize it. Now, would you like to read a couple poems for us? That would be great, really.
Sure. I'll share poems out of Reflections Rising and maybe
Rising.
one out of Phoenix Heart, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Morphed. Secret identity. Who am I? I've morphed. I've changed only for him. I've taken on his likes and his dislikes, but I wonder, does he know mine? I've morphed. I've changed. My friends even notice I'm not the same. My
Mm,
personality, my looks, my glow, I've changed into something beautiful in my mind. But to the people on the outside looking in, I've morphed into something new but strange. The people
mm,
say, he too is to blame. My identity snuffed, taken away because the true me has to be hidden, morphed away.
mm,
Conforming to thoughts, ideology placed by him. The people on the outside simply state, you're not taking the time to realize that if you have to morph for the person you're with, they are
mm,
not the correct choice for you, nor worth your time. I silently analyzed, taking the advice in, slowly realizing the words are true. Because the question is, would he morph for you?
wow.
And so, and
That's
so that
beautiful,
can be
really.
for male
Secret
or female.
identity. Sounds
Mm-hmm.
great.
Yeah.
Sounds amazing. Thank you. And I particularly love your word usage, actually. I love the placement of your word. And I think that's one thing about poetry. It's the way the word engulf its readers. And again, now that you're writing a novel, that's a way that poets who first started writing with writing poems, there's a way their novel reads. It reads quite poetical. That you can hear the I don't know if you've experienced this, but I've read so many authors who started being a poet. When poets write novels, it's very metaphorical and it's very good that you can create imagery in your head as you read along. So yeah, that's beautiful.
Mhm.
Let's hear what you have in the next book. I can go on and on.
No, I like hearing your take because it's not often I get to talk to other poets.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, let
Yeah.
me read one out of Phoenix Heart. Um, well, this one is mainly about relationships. So, Second Thoughts is probably my favorite poem out of Phoenix
Mm,
Heart
yeah.
because this one touches on self healing, self love.
Mm,
So, Second Thoughts, second chances. Let's look at to determine the circumstances. Your voice says second chances. Your eyes, your actions speak second thoughts.
mm,
Second thoughts hurt, they slice because second thoughts destroy something deep inside. A second thought means I was not the best or not even meant for you, just means you ran out of options. So second
mm.
thoughts come to mind. Here you are back hoping for one more time. No second thoughts will be granted this time, not one. This time, I'm giving you a second chance to reconcile
Mm,
the thoughts in your head, listen, heal, and understand. Second thoughts, second chances mean two different things. The second chance given by me is the chance for you to understand and receive. I am no longer accepting a second thought. While I love you, I value me more. Please take your second thoughts and walk out my door.
wow. That was so beautiful, really.
So
I
what do
think
you
I
think
love
about that one?
I think I love this most.
You like this one the most?
That was cute, really. Thank you. That was quite beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Wow, you have
You're
such an
welcome.
amazing body of poem, really, with different themes and
Mm.
different tone. That's quite beautiful. Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
And now, just
You're
in case we
welcome.
have some viewers who are currently watching this interview, I would love to get a copy of any of your books. On what platform are they available on for purchase?
My books currently are on Barnes and Noble um, .com.
Mm,
And if they reach out directly to me, I also have copies that I send out signed, and they just have to email me at marcinem.moore@gmail, and I send out signed copies.
that's great.
They can purchase. Hmm.
That's amazing. Yeah. And I left a link in the discussion part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of Marcin M. Moss books directly on Amazon and also on other platforms. So thank you so much, Marcin, for accepting the invitation to be featured on P English Literature. It's awesome having this conversation with you.
Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah,
having me. I've enjoyed
absolutely.
it.
It's my pleasure. It was fun too. This was quite lovely.